Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 765. I'm Tom Cagley, your host, getting ready to go to Agile 2023. If you're there, look me up. I'll be there with at least two of the columnists from the Software Process and Measurement Cast, Jeremy Berrio and Case Kostecki. In the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 765, we continue our summer theme on critical thinking by discussing authority. When deciding what to believe, authority we place on the source has a significant impact. Authority bias is the name of that cognitive bias. We also have a visit from the one and the only Susan Parente, who brings her Not A Scrumdamentalist column to the podcast. In this installment, we discuss why meetings seem to be the only mechanism for making decisions. Authority in Critical Thinking by Thomas M. Cagley Jr., Megan E. Cagley. When deciding what to believe, the authority we place on the source has a significant impact. Authority bias is the name for this cognitive bias. Biases are shortcuts in thinking, which are useful. An example is the flight response that a rustling in tall grass evokes. If you've heard a lion, running away is good. If you run away from your standard poodle you've spent hours looking for, you're out of luck. As with any other bias, authority bias can deliver mixed outcomes. When the National Weather Service, NWS by the way, tells us to get in the basement because a tornado is coming, I'm going to act. The NWS has authority. The problem with authority bias, or any bias at all by the way, is that it shuts down critical thinking. We rely on opinions of authority we haven't vetted. It's important to evaluate the person, the knowledge, or skills we use to grant authority before we act. Recently, I read an article on continuous integration and continuous delivery, CI/CD. It was a guest article on a blog I've enjoyed and valued for years. The article made many assertions about how to approach CI/CD using brand name tools. It was product placement. That set my alarm bells off. The author's blurb at the end of the article touted the writer's experience in the industry. The intent was to establish authority, to give weight to the article. A quick check into LinkedIn indicated the person had spent their career in sales, and not as a sales engineer. They had a weak base to claim technical authority. Validating whether we should grant a person or institution authority has to begin by examining their credentials and motivation. All decisions have some bias. Many times that bias is an assumption of authority. Early in my career, I got two pieces of advice. The first was to consider the assumptions I use to make a decision. For example, does the authority I grant a person fit the context? Assumptions can compound potential authority bias. If someone assumes that an experienced Scrum coach knows everything about Agile, they might overweigh their advice on any other development technique. Just because you're a great Scrum master doesn't mean you're an expert on testing. Before granting authority to someone, consider their background, skills, knowledge, and potential biases. This type of consideration takes time and thought. Authority is an extension of power. When examining the authority you are granting someone, an approach I have used is to examine where power and authority come from. 1. Expertise. Knowledge, skills, and experience in a topic area generates power so that others will listen and trust. When a person's authority comes from expertise, I check their credentials. For example, open your internet browser, check their LinkedIn entry, or look up their publications. Simple advice: confirm an authority figure's expertise. If it comes from tradition or position, these forms of power are common in hierarchical organizations. A position draws authority from its position in the org chart. This type of authority is often used to generate obedience and compliance. If it comes from charisma, personality, or personal characteristics of a person, can generate or potentially destroy power. Charisma is apt to shortcut critical thinking. When I sense this type of power is the base of someone's authority, I use my critical thinking skills. The goal is to separate their magnetism from the information they are presenting. There are some other forms of power that translate into authority, but these are the most common in software development world. None are prima facie bad or good, but they all can shortcut critical thinking. In the end, trust but verify. Thoughts, comments, all welcome. Please feel free to reach out to us at spamcastinfo@gmail.com. We look forward to the conversation. Susan Parente, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast. By the way, are you still doing that Kanban for me stuff?
Oh, absolutely. The only time I stop doing it are the weeks that I feel like I don't want to get that much done. Then I drop it. I just say, that it's so effective that if I do it on the weeks I don't want to get anything done, I'll end up accidentally getting more done. So yeah, I try to do it.
When was the last time you had a week that you didn't want to get anything or much done? Was that like when you were 4?
No, I don't know. Yeah, there's actually somebody I recently met commented on that about me, and I was like, yeah, I guess that's obvious to other people that when I hear from somebody, like, you're always very busy. I'm like, of course I'm busy. I'm like, even if I retired, I'd be busy. I'd probably be volunteering 5 places. I'd be just as busy. I just wouldn't be getting paid. So anyway.
You'd be doing something different, because if you didn't, and this is what you really like, that'd kill you. So don't do anything silly like that. Susan, I'd like to suggest that the only way we know we're alive, speaking of alive, is that we have meetings. I think that's a common thing that I've seen in many organizations. It's not about getting stuff done. It's about how many meetings are you in. And if your calendar doesn't look like it's filled with meetings, you must not be very important.
Well, that's funny. So yeah, so let's see. Well, I was at the dentist the other day, and we're trying to schedule an appointment, and the dental assistant who's scheduling the appointment walked around the other side of the table for a second. She goes, "Wow, your calendar, that's pretty insane." She goes, "It looks like ours." And then she showed her screen. She goes, "I didn't mean to pry, but it just had it was every hour was booked." And I said, "Yeah, but those are actually not all meetings. So my calendar actually block off time for me to do things."
What?
So
block out time?
So if not, I'll never get anything done. So I will tell you this. So I was on a contract last year. I had probably 6 to 7 hours of meetings every day. I was actually I was a Scrum Master coach / deputy program manager, but I was filling in for the Scrum Master that was not there, that we were looking to fill that position. So I was filling in for them in the meantime. So it was driving me crazy. I was 6 to 7 hours of meetings every 8-hour day. I was on the contract for 8 hours a day, in addition to all the other stuff I do. So anyway, I realized something was definitely a problem when somebody said to me, "Oh, I heard from the customer you're 5 minutes late to a meeting." I'm like, 5 minutes late to a meeting? Only 5? I'm like, do you know what your day looks like when you have 6 hours of meetings? You don't go to the bathroom. That's what that looks like. And so I got 2 dogs sitting by the door with their legs crossed. Not to mention myself, I gotta, So it was funny when somebody said, "Well, the customer said you were 5 minutes late." And I'm like, yeah, I was probably going to the bathroom. I know that's a little bit crazy to say, but that's what happens. And, I think it's worse in virtual world because people are just they're back-to-back meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the real world, everybody sees each other one meeting, they leave that meeting to go to the next meeting, and they stop at the bathroom on the way. So when people show up at that meeting, say, "Oh, where's Susan?" They're like, "Oh, I saw her go into the bathroom," or "I just saw her, she's coming out of the bathroom." Like, I know it sounds silly, but like in the real world, it's like okay to go to the bathroom between meetings. But in the virtual world, you're like, you're 5 minutes late. Oh, well, that's because I was like doing my hair. No, I like what the heck? Like, first of all, if I can avoid being on video, I will, because like I don't want to have to think about doing my hair. I just pull it back in a bun or whatever. And I'm usually wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt, unless it's the summertime, I'm wearing a tank top. And if I have a meeting I have to be on video, I grab a golf shirt and throw it on top. So anyway, I used to wear suits to work every day, but this obviously my laundry bill is less and I have more time. But it's ridiculous. So people now in the virtual world don't believe people have to go to the bathroom. So you have to like embarrassingly say, I need to go to the bathroom. So my solution to that, by the way, is you get on and you tell people, be right back, or I need 2 minutes. So you get on the Teams meeting, put yourself on mute, turn your video off, and type in be right back. Like, because if not, you're 5 minutes late. And then it becomes like a contractual issue or something goofy.
I spend a lot of time in airports. Yeah, I guess this is, well, you go in and people are doing what they do in the bathroom, and you hear somebody from 3 stalls down in the middle of a meeting. It's like, it's just like, what? How does he explain the background noise? Or he has a really good noise canceling thing that will interpret that and take that out. I don't know. Again, I think we are, and I like the idea of blocking out time. I've tried things like booking, if you're going to book an hour-ish meeting, book it only for 50 minutes and actually cut it off. I mean, let's face it, when we were in the real world and you had to have travel time, right? Mm-hmm. Heck, even in high school, back when the bell would ring and you'd have to run to, because you'd never do that crazy stuff in university level. But you would have travel time. There would be something in there to let you get to the next class so that you didn't get a detention kind of thing. It sounds like now in the virtual world, you're getting detentions because, there's no travel time in essence. But what is it that we have to have meetings for everything? What is it that we don't have individuals making decisions? Everything has to be collaborative or groupthink kind of meetings. And I'll stop there and get your hot take on that.
Yeah, so that's interesting too. So the other thing I found is that when we went virtual, people wanted to schedule more meetings. It's like, if I don't see you working, then you're not getting anything done, which actually is the opposite, because somebody said to me the other day, one of my client meetings, "Oh, so-and-so is always in a meeting." So it's one of my government customers, and he's like, he is in a lot of meetings, because when I try to schedule stuff, his calendar is just all blocked off. It's hard to schedule. And so the other guy, also a government person, he laughed and said, "Oh yeah, he's in a lot of meetings, which means he doesn't get any work done. All he does is sit in meetings." So he almost like said it in a way of like jealousy. Like, he's like, "I wish I was in as many meetings, because then that would be my excuse for not getting any work done."
Well, don't you multitask? I mean, obviously you're not going to be present in all those meetings. You'll just sit there and, pull out your wonderful keyboard and just have at it.
Yeah.
Because people do have to do work, don't they?
I last time I checked, yes, and it's pretty crazy. So yes, I think that there's now more meetings because people are thinking, well, if I'm not seeing them work, then they might not be working, which is really that is a bad idea. So we obviously in Agile, we don't like that. I have seen people in Scrum, when working virtually, just turn on a camera, maybe hit mute if there's background noise, but just kind of like be live throughout the day. I'm not really a fan of people looking at my face all day like that. So, I don't know how I feel about that. But the idea that like you're sort of like your cubicle neighbors virtually, I much prefer the chat. I have a lot of open chats, and you can, if you use MS Teams, you can pin your chats. Like it could be a group chat with people that you regularly talk to. You can pin that so that you can then refer back to it or check back, and it's a way to like asynchronously communicate, which is really nice. And what's interesting about chat, you can use chat both synchronously and asynchronously, which a lot of people try to do that with email and it doesn't work. So if you send me an email message and I send you back a message right away, then it's like it becomes very disjointed because email can slow down. Also, I find it very annoying because email is not supposed to be used synchronously. So if somebody starts doing that with me on email, I'll say, chat with me. Get on Google Chat or get on Teams Chat or something like that.
Or just turn, if you're using Teams or whatever, right? Just turn it on and have that quick conversation. A lot of overhead.
Yes. Or just like do an ad hoc meeting, just turn it on and talk, right?
More meetings!
I know. But you got to be careful with the ad hoc meeting doesn't end up in an hour-long meeting. But I do think it's happening more and more. And I think as far as meetings go, a lot of times with my client, I can't really control it because, they're a federal client, you're a contractor. If they say they want you in a meeting, it's like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Like there's really not much you can do about that. However, you can make sure that meetings are clear, that you need to be in those meetings, that the meeting has a decent agenda. You can ask for the agenda in advance. You could say, hey, this looks like an important meeting, but I'm not seeing my part in it. Or why do I need to be there? What do I need to deliver in this meeting? Yes, people multitask. I do it too. But if you're multitasking that much, you probably don't need to be in that meeting either. So you can always make a case to your boss or to senior management that what's the cost of you being in that meeting? So while I'm in this meeting, I'm not doing yada, yada, yada. Sometimes people will say, hey, you don't have to be in the meeting, but you can delegate somebody in your team, which actually is a great opportunity. Like, maybe having one of your team members be in a meeting to stand in for you. You don't want to give them all your meetings, but, if you kind of pass it around a little bit, like for some people, they're not in any meetings at all. So it depends on where you are in the management structure. So it actually might be a growth development opportunity for them. But for us, it's just like taking out the garbage, right? So it's like not a growth and development opportunity. So there's, that's another way of dealing with it.
Sometimes meetings are a way to avoid having to go to bed at night because you can stay up late and work and fit all that stuff in that you didn't do. The whole idea of people, well, here's the one that gets me, right, in meetings. We'll be going on, and you'll ask a question, and you'll get, well, I'm sorry, Tom, I wasn't paying attention. Why are you in the meeting if you're not paying attention, kind of stuff?
Because I have to be.
or I'm afraid not to be.
Yep. There's that too.
So I think we're meeting crazy. And
yep.
I do a lot of Scrum work. I do some safe work, Scrum work, lots of Kanban, all of those. And there are events, whether it's an operations review in Kanban or retrospective in Scrum. There are set meetings. But given that people are meeting heavy to begin with, it all gets blamed on this agile stuff. We got so many different meetings now. It's like, you're probably doing these meetings anyway, or you're not doing any process improvement. How do you have a conversation with someone about how to sort of lean out your meeting schedule? And I like the idea of actually pushing back and saying, hey, do I really need to be there? What's my role, kind of stuff. But are there other suggestions that you'd give somebody?
Well, one of the silly things I see people do, especially when they move from traditional to an agile approach, is they add a daily stand-up, but then they still have a weekly status meeting. Okay, so you lost me there. So your weekly status meeting is an hour to an hour and a half. if you're doing a 15-minute daily stand-up, that ends up being an hour and 15 minutes a week. So there's your daily status meeting, right? So you should not need an hour and a half, not daily status, weekly status, if you're doing a daily, right? There's supposed to be one or the other, not both. So if you think, oh, I'm being agile by having a daily stand-up, and you added that, everybody's going to be miserable. Like, that's, agile is supposed to create value for the customer and reduce overhead for your team. A weekly status meeting is overhead. I have a weekly status report that I have to do. I try to not take more than 15 minutes to do it. If I'm taking more than 15 minutes to do it, then I'm not sure the value. Now, I mean, I've worked on different things. Sometimes I have a report that I have to do that takes hours, whatever, but it depends on the kind of work that you're doing. But you should keep in mind that these things should be time boxed, right? So even if you're in charge of, like, I have a contract with 20 people, it took me a lot more than 15 minutes to do our weekly status. In fact, I had to meet with the client every week. But I would, like, time box that and say, okay, I'm going to set up the agenda, and I'm not going to take more than 15 minutes to create the agenda for our meeting. And then I'd meet with the customer for an hour, and then I'd maybe have a half an hour to do notes or whatever after. But time box that stuff, and time box the meetings too. I mean, I was in a meeting earlier this week that was supposed to be an hour, and it took 2 hours. Again, this is my client. I don't have a lot of meetings with them, and what we were doing was necessary for me. So it was okay for me to be in it longer. But if it wasn't, and I had any control about it type of thing, then I would have said, hey, I've got a hard stop at such and such time. That's what you tell people. You just say, I have a hard stop at such and such time. For me, it was good because we got things accomplished I need to get accomplished in that meeting. So it didn't bother me that it went over, other than I had to push something else out. But I was in communication. Remember, as I was talking about last time, having integrity, right? So I let somebody know, hey, I'm not gonna be able to be there on time. I'll let you know as soon as I'm out of here. Actually, since we've been talking today, I noticed it popped up on my screen. There was a meeting that apparently somebody invited me to this morning, didn't ask me if I could come. And I found out about it when the meeting popped up because it was a Teams meeting. And so Teams meetings tend to, like, just tell you when they're occurring. And so I was like, oh, I have a meeting. So I go and check my email in between things. And I was like, oh, look at that. I got invited to a meeting. So I responded to them. I said, hey, I just found out about this. I'm in a meeting. I'll be there in a half an hour. So I mean, like, but this is, and it's funny, the topic of that meeting, I should have been a required person, and I should have been notified well in advance. But they also don't realize I do more than just that, right? So a lot of people will think you're sitting in front of your computer looking at every email that comes through.
Instantaneously, synchronously.
Exactly. And I have so many emails because I teach at so many places. I have different clients. I actually have different laptops. I have 3 laptops that I use. 2 are for specific clients, and 1 is my own. And so, yep, it's like, Tom's got another laptop there too. I mean, this is what happens, right? So that we have to set expectations with other people too. And one of the worst things you can do for productivity is to be immediately responsive to emails. And I will admit to doing it at certain times in certain places. But what I'm finding is having to do work in different places, like, even though it's all virtual, but using this computer instead of that computer is making me not just answer any email at any given moment. So I have times during the day, like I go for a walk around noon. That's when I answer my emails. One of mine, like where I teach, I usually answer those emails in the evening because that's when students tend to email me anyway. So like at the end of the day after dinner or whatever, I check those emails. So I'm not constantly just replying to emails, but people do expect that. So a lot of this is just setting expectations. In the client environment, it is more difficult to get out of meetings, especially if like the person paying you is like, we need you to be in this meeting. But you can have a real conversation with them and say, hey, here's what my time looks like. Here's the things that I need to get done. I mean, I did have this conversation with one of my main clients. I had a 20-person contract, and they wanted me to get something done. They said, you know what? I'm in a lot of meetings. That's why it hasn't gotten done, because they're like, we need it quicker. And I'm like, well, stop putting me in all these meetings. And they gave me literally, I think it was 24 hours of no meetings. But I mean, that didn't entirely occur, because I still had my team had to meet with me and talk to me or whatever. But it was funny. No sooner did that woman say that to me, and about an hour later, she invited me to a meeting. So I declined it, tentative, just to know the meeting was still happening. Declined and said, yep, remember how we talked about this? No meetings till tomorrow. I'm working on this task. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know this meeting's happening. And I just tentatively declined. So, I like to do, as a manager, I like to do a tentative decline, because I want to know the meeting's happening. But I don't, if I just decline, it won't show up on my calendar at all. But it was funny. She's the one who was like, I need this from you. You don't have to be in meetings for 24 hours. And an hour later, she invited me to a meeting. I was like, well, this is what happened. So boundary setting, Tom, that's all I can say. And I'm not great at it, because I want to make everyone happy, and I want to get it done. I want to help people. But sometimes these things, you're getting in your own way. You're letting the meetings get in your own way, and you gotta push back nicely.
Susan, if someone wanted to continue the conversation, how would they go about doing that?
You could go ahead and find me on LinkedIn, Susan Parente. And if you look on LinkedIn, you will find me in the DC area. However, my background is a bridge in New York. It's the new New York Bridge, which I think was named the Mario Cuomo Bridge, but we still call it the new New York Bridge, or the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is what it replaced. So actually, all the New Yorkers know what I'm talking about, even the ones in Jersey.
I even know where the new Tappan Zee, and I actually thought it was the new Tappan Zee Bridge.
So we actually, even though whatever the signs say, we call it the new tap. So anyway, that's the bridge behind me. I love bridges as a mechanical engineer. And then you can also email me.
What do you call the airport in downtown Washington, D.C.?
I call it Reagan National, or National.
I just call it National, because that's what it was. And, they can rename it. It's sort of like, well, somebody bought the naming rights. It could be the Progressive National. It's always going to be National.
Yeah. It's funny when that was renamed, Reagan was still alive, and a few people were like, well, he's, they're naming this bridge after him, airport after him, but he's not even passed yet. And it's like, he was in the hospital, and I don't think he knew who he was. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that he was pretty darn close to being gone, so it wasn't like he showed up at the naming, at the ribbon cutting for the national airport. But yeah, I call it National or Reagan National, but it is interesting how we do that. But yeah, actually I met somebody earlier this week. She's from Long Island, and I said, oh, we just call that the island. And then in New York, like, you call it the city. You say they're from the city. And people are like, well, which city? And you're like, there is no other city. When you live in New York or New Jersey, the city is New York City. The city
is New York City. Yep, absolutely.
You don't have to describe it as being New York. It's just the city. So anyway, so yes, it's called the new tap. And I think that's wonderful that's what you know it as. I'm going to tell my New York friends that even people who don't live in New York call it the new tap. So anyway, but so that's the bridge behind me when you look for me. I like to give people that, because I look for people all the time. And if you're looking for John Smith, you need to know something else. Like, where is John Smith and what is their background? Because you will not know you got the right John Smith. So that's one way to find me. The other is Parente, Parente, at S as in Sam, the number 3 -TEC, TonyEdwardCharlie.com. So you can shoot me an email or find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really the best place to get me. And I post a lot of stuff and repost. I also tweet too at the same time. So yeah, you can find me in those places.
Susan, again, this is always marvelous. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and, have a meeting with me. a recording session. I don't even consider these meetings. So have a really great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. And then everybody listening in, do what you can about those meetings. Have some boundaries. Do it with a smile.
Yeah. At the very least, you could have a meeting to talk about meetings.
You could do that. And if people don't laugh, then you know where you're at, right? So at least it'll help you baseline things. As I like to have a meeting to talk about meetings, and if people don't find humor with that, then you know where you're at. That's a marker.
Absolutely. Super. In Reread Saturday News. And now for something completely different. Both the title of a 1971 Monty Python movie and a hint at Chapter 2 of Made to Stick, Why Some Ideas Survive and Others Die title. The title is unexpected. If you're reading along, it won't be that much of a surprise. Unexpected is the second condition for something to be sticky. Links in the show notes to this week's and all past weeks' installments of Reread Saturday's reread of Made to Stick. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast, we will feature our interview with Ben Johnson, founder of Particle 41. We discussed how important teams are to delivering value.
If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet? If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?